played wide receiver, he played running back. I love to get him on, see if I can get him on. We'll see what happens. We'll be behind the scenes with that, but having his younger brother is great, man. I remember this guy, and I remember his brother, Rocky Ishmael. But these guys from Jersey, man, that's a great thing. Jersey connection, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. Even though relocated to Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania with his brother, but at the same time they're from Jersey. That's where they were hailed from, New Jersey. So we're gonna get into that and all that good stuff. So he's coming on in a few minutes. Like I said, last week we had Baltimore and Houston. Baltimore won their matchup last week, 34-10. Had a slow start to the first half, but they was able to get the job done and take over the second half. Basically, they dominated like they're supposed to. Houston has nothing to hang their heads about. That coach, D'Amico Ryans, did a great job. C.J. Stroud played beyond his years as a rookie. He's definitely going to win Rookie of the Year. He deserves it. And give credit to Houston. But it's Baltimore's time, it looks like. And that's why he was able to get the victory. Lamar Jackson still has a lot to prove. He's still 2-3 in the postseason. He still has to get the job done. Against Mahomes, who's been there and done that. So Lamar Jackson still has a lot to prove tomorrow. And see what happens with that. Also, you had the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers did not play their best game. They barely won that game. They were very fortunate and lucky to win that game because the Packers were the better team. Kickoff returns, almost ran for a touchdown. Jordan Love played excellent, played very well until the end of the game. Threw a bad reception at the end. But they did what they wanted to do. The receivers were making plays. They did what they had to do. And they just didn't hold on. They failed to capitalize on opportunities in the red zone at times. They missed a field goal that should have been made when the score was 21-17. And they went down the field. Give credit to Brock Purdy. Went down the field and were able to get the touchdown, go-ahead touchdown. That was something that he had to prove. And Deebo Samuel got hurt with his shoulder. Matter of fact, Deebo Samuel will be playing tomorrow night against the Detroit Lions. So that's a great news if you're a 49er fan. So they won that game 24-21. Very good game. And then you had Sunday, you had Detroit versus Tampa Bay. Detroit won 31-23 over Tampa Bay. And that was a very, very impressive win for Detroit Lions. They're going to their first championship game since 1991. So it's been a long time coming. They beat Tampa Bay. Pretty good game by golf. They did what they had to do. They got those running backs, got those receivers. I just sitting on the defensive side. It's a better team than Tampa Bay. So the Lions, they've never been to the Super Bowl before. That's going to be a big storyline tomorrow. Because when you look at the championships Sunday, Ravens obviously been to the Super Bowl a few times. Kansas City obviously been going to the Super Bowl a lot in recent years. Then you look at San Francisco, they've been to several appearances in the Super Bowl. But Detroit Lions, they have never been to the Super Bowl. They've been around a long time. They've never been to the Super Bowl in their franchise history. You look at, there are 4 franchises actually that have never made it to the Super Bowl. Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Houston Texans. Those are the 4 teams that have never made it to the Super Bowl. Detroit is trying to break that drought. That makes that game tomorrow night so interesting. It's a fascinating game tomorrow. I'm going to get into it in the second half of the show. But when we talk about Detroit, they never been to the Super Bowl before. I'm saying they're trying to break that drought, that long drought without being in the Super Bowl. And their franchise street to see if they can do it. It's going to be a tough situation because you look at San Francisco, they have not played well. They didn't play well last game. The last game they didn't play well. They're very lucky to win that game, to get out of that game alive with a victory. But now we're going to see what they do tomorrow against Detroit, San Francisco. So Steve Samuel will be playing, so that's going to be the regular. So basically, I broke down most of the games, so I'm not going to do that in the second half. So I'm just doing it before Qadry comes on real short. And he's on right now. So welcome to the Rashad Show. Qadry Ismail. Can you hear me? I can't see your face.
There you go. Okay.
All right.
Oh, no. How about now?
Yes, I see you right now. Welcome to the show. Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Appreciate you having me on, brother.
All right, man. First and foremost, where you originally from? Where were you born?
Jumping right on into it. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I had to think about it for a second. Where you born? Born in Newark, New Jersey, and Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania is where I grew up.
Okay, who were your role models growing up? Like, as far as growing up where you was at in Jersey, like who you looked up to?
weekends. My dad would have us during the week. So from aspect of like role models and mentors, didn't really know much. My father really wasn't a sports guy, so he was more of a scholar, and he was always studying something. Well, from my mom's perspective, she was like, all right, my three sons, y'all need to go ahead and get out the house and burn off some of this energy. So my mom was like, all right, go ahead and go play with the neighborhood kids. And that's where I first learned about sandlot football. And you just go out there and you just start playing. Well, there were these brothers who, they were awesome dudes, but they had there was like two older brothers, three older brothers, something like that. And they realized myself and my older brother, who was only like 11 months older than me, he and I would play together on the same team or whatever, and they realized how good we were, so they called us us the Campbell brothers after Earl Campbell. So I'm like, well, who's this Earl Campbell dude? So I looked him up, and I was like, wow, Earl Campbell is the man. And from that point forward, I was like, yo, Earl Campbell, I want to be like Earl Campbell. So anybody from an influence standpoint, it was wanted to be like Earl Campbell, and obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, they were winning their world championships and Super Bowls back to back and all that. And I thought I was going to be, Earl Campbell playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was like my mindset. And I think those are like kind of like the flow and the thinking of as I was growing up.
All right, so moving forward, like as far as skip to high school, but going to the colleges, obviously with the Syracuse. What other schools that you wanted to go to other than Syracuse?
Yeah, so the recruiting process back then was way different than it is now, but there were some similarities that still kind of exist. It just takes one school to like you. And my story was this, like I was a late bloomer. And my brother, so I keep saying my brother, for those who don't know, of your listeners, my brother is the Rocket. His name is Rocket. His nickname is the Rocket. He went to Notre Dame and played in the NFL for about 10 years, but he was super fast, very explosive player, and just a dynamic individual. He was on cover of magazines, the whole nine. He was just unreal. Anyway, with that said, my brother and I, when we were in high school, being in the infancy of recruiting, we ran track, and one of the first scholarship offers was from Nebraska. Some coach somewhere, liked what they saw from him as a sprinter and wanted to recruit him and recruited him as a sprinter. That was his first scholarship offer. We wanted to go and play college football, and my camera is getting knocked all over the place. But we basically, I think Notre Dame was on like the peripheral. Penn State, if you're in the state of Pennsylvania, Joe Paterno, who was the head coach at the time, what he would do, he would be like, all right, I'm going to recruit these kids, and if they're good, cool, I got a bonus. But if they're not, at least I look like I'm doing something good because these kids are going to come to my hometown. So bottom line, or come to Penn State, the hometown crowd, I should say, if there's the next guy that's up, then basically it's going to be like a good big thing, and I locked down the state of Pennsylvania with all the recruiting. And so I was running track. I just finished winning my third gold medal, and the defensive coordinator for Penn State, his son, Ron Dickerson, and Ron Dickerson Jr., he just finished competing, and so he was like, hey, I didn't know you were that fast. I'm gonna tell Joe about you. And I was like, wow, okay, coach, yeah, that's great. So I don't know what happened from that point forward. All I know is the floodgates opened up. Every school on the East Coast that you could think of wanted to recruit me and my brother. So basically, I had my 5 official visits. I went to, obviously, Penn State. I took a visit down to Maryland. I took a visit to Tennessee. Took a visit to North Carolina State. And then, obviously, Syracuse. And, Syracuse was just the spot for me. I just knew, this is easy. This is where I want to go. Play my college ball. And it was a great decision. It was the best decision for me. And off I went.
Okay. So you started, your first season was in '89. That was your first season.
Freshman year, 1989.
Okay. I just want to go over some games if you have a good memory of the games, possibly. But I remember you played against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, number 10 versus number 13. And for those who listen right now, Syracuse was really, really good when Mr. Ismail was with Syracuse. They were very, very good compared to what they are today. They were very respectable. You was number 10. Your team was number 10 in the country. And when you played Pittsburgh, and unfortunately you lost 30 to 23. Do you have any recollections of that game against Syracuse? Syracuse and Pittsburgh?
So I was the redshirt freshman. And again, unlike today where it seems as though guys are rushing to play and play right away, I was like, I ain't trying to play right away. I'm trying to grow into my own and figure out this college game and all that. So I was a kickoff returner. And I just remember that particular game I had, over 135 yards worth of return, maybe 142 yards, something like that. But we always had great field position. I was at the 30, 35, around there every single time. And yeah, I just remember just that particular day, they had a guy who technically was my class. Alex Van Pelt, I believe, was the quarterback. I'm pretty sure it was Alex. But that quarterback was slinging it everywhere. He was just like lighting us up. And we had a really good squad. But that day they got the better of us.
We'll skip around. You played in your first bowl game against Georgia, the Peach Bowl. Talk about that experience as your team won 19-18.
The Peach Bowl experience was interesting because that was my first time down in the ATL. And so, bruh, as a bowl recipient, you get cash to pay for your meals. And so, I don't know what they do now, but like with the NIL deals and all that, you get, obviously a significant amount depending upon what school you go to. But for Syracuse, if you had an opportunity to go to a bowl, you're going to get, meal money. So you maybe get 200-300, and for a couple of days, you rich as a college kid who maybe only had $10. Now all of a sudden you got $300-400. And so everybody wants to go shopping. Everybody wants to, get a present for their, family member or buy something for themselves. And you get bowl gear too. So you get, the sweatshirts, you get all, the bowl watches, all kind of, swag that, at the time it was just like you living large. Well, I went to this one, store in Atlanta. It was a department store. I don't even know what a department store is nowadays, but it was like a level of like a Neiman Marcus for those who might not know what a department store was back then. So it was Neiman Marcus. Anyway, go up in there. I'm like, man, I heard of that. Bruh, they had homeless people in the stalls in the bathroom, just straight chilling, living in the stall. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I never knew that. And of course, hanging with the fellas from Georgia. Some of the receivers, it was mad cool. We all had this function together. And I was like, yo, let's hang. I was like, yeah, all right, bet, Receivers from another school, we good. Like, yeah, this is fine by me. He took me over to Magic City. And I was like, yeah. So this is Magic City. Okay. Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm there to get in, because I'm like, bro, look, man, we Georgia football. We rolled up there, and it's like, yo, Georgia football. Bouncer was twice the size of all of us. Receivers, we slight little fellas. And dude opened up the door, we went in. Some dude who looked like he was the Mac out of the movies. And he was like, yo, young bloods, what y'all doing? What's up? So he brought over some people and he let it rain for us. So I was like, what is going? Where did I just? So that was my experiences with the ATL, and the game itself was amazing because of the fact that you're looking at an SEC football team that everybody's like, oh, it's Georgia, you're only Syracuse, but we whooped them. It was a physical game, it was back and forth, and we wound up getting the victory. So that was kind of the ramping point of playing not only for Syracuse but also winning. And what I mean by that is that we were a team that was like, yeah, we go to bowl games and we win. And I was just really thankful that we got a chance to get it done.
Right. Fast forward to your sophomore year, 1990, and unfortunately, it was your coach at the time, Dick McPherson's final year as head coach. Also, he would go to coach the Patriots. Also, it was the final season of Syracuse football being an independent. You end up joining the Big East. Talk about winning the Aloha Bowl against Arizona, 28-0. Talk about that.
Well, I think that was like an interesting year for me because, obviously I was a wide receiver. I was a kickoff returner. I didn't want to be just a kickoff returner. I was a damn good one, but I wanted to play receiver and had a chance to, really step up and play. But I broke my finger in the beginning of the year, and I just never really got a chance to really establish myself. We had a young dude named Shelby Hill who, was just a really good, talented receiver. And unlike, again, today where you just look at it like, oh, man, they don't like me, oh, this, that, and other thing, I want to go into the transfer portal. And they have a portal. If you transfer, you lose your eligibility. So it was a blessing because Dick McPherson, for him, he liked me, but wasn't really like, yeah, this is my guy. And so I was like, man, I don't have a good feeling about this. I think I might be on the way out. And the bowl game was just the culmination of, it was tough. I was sitting there, I don't think I played a snap. And, it was just one of those cases where I really was like contemplating what I wanted to do next. I was a member of the track team. I was a Big East champion. I, ran hurdles and was very successful in that. And basically, Coach Mack, he and I got to some choice words, and I was like, well, I guess this is the end of my football career. But sure enough, we go back to Syracuse after beating up on Arizona, and I kid you not, I don't even think he addressed the team. I don't think he addressed the football team. I think he just, he left and we found out somehow, some way. But that's where the turning point came in because Paul Pasqualoni was our linebackers coach who, he was just an old school, hardcore football coach who I was like, man, I don't know if this is going to be a good fit for me. But it turned out to be a huge blessing because he brought in his own others went with Coach Mack. But I think that spring was the biggest, best thing that could have ever happened to me because Dennis Goldman, Coach Goldman was my receiver coach, and Ivan Fears my receiver coach went up to New England with Coach Mack, and it was awesome. I had a great spring ball practice and kind of took off from there.
Right, so you got Paul Pasqualoni in as a coach in '91. Had a great season though, 10-2. Only 2 losses to Florida and Florida State. Let's talk about the Florida. Excuse me, only 2 losses. Not you beat Florida, you lost to Florida State and East Carolina. But the Florida game, you pulled off an upset. Talk about that at home against Florida. You beat them 38-21. Talk about that big win against Florida. They was number 5 in the country. Talk about that game.
Correct. Yeah, it's interesting because that game. If I were to ask my boys what pregame speech, we all get these coaches that give us these different pregame speeches and all that, and they're like, what, do you want to say to your team, whatever. But what pregame speech was the best pregame speech you ever heard? And any of my boys will say that Florida game pregame speech. Coach Pasqualoni, first of all, he was like, start of the year, he was like, I think that, our contract with Converse is up. And the football team, while we had Converse, basketball team had Nike. And they had Nike from the beginning. Well, we were sitting there, we was always envious because you walk around campus with, your Converse on is one thing, but you walk around campus with the orange swoosh sneakers, you knew that, man, that dude was on the basketball team. So, literally, I think even maybe the lacrosse team might have been, I think they changed over to Nike as well. So we were like, well, let's just make us a Nike school. And so he came in, he was like, what do you want to do? Nike or Converse? Man, we raised our hands, Nike. Done. So we got our Nike swag on, and obviously Florida had been a Nike school. We go out there, and like, the pregame speech was out of this world. He was like, I believe in all of you. And he just started going down the list. And, like, I felt like I could run through a wall. And so, sure enough, Coach Pasqualoni, us riled up. We went out there, and I remember that particular game. I had I think it was like a 38-yard, 9-route, scored on it. I don't know. I just had a really, really good game. I had some good catches, everything. I had over either 100 or close to 100, something like that. I don't recall the yardage, but I had a really good game and had over 100 all-purpose yards. But that one kind of put us on the map. So we were like, yo, we for real.
Yeah, unfortunately, a couple weeks later, played Florida State, lost that game 46-14. Now, that was a great team. But let's talk about, I think in that game you returned a kick return for a touchdown, correct? You scored a touchdown.
Kickoff return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And I had a pass, a TD pass as well.
Yeah, talk about that experience. I know obviously you lost that game, but there's being a game like that, a big game of that magnitude, because your squad was ranked number 10 in the country, and they was ranked number 1, so it was a top 10 matchup. Let's talk about playing against that Florida State team.
It's weird because I think for as long as I can remember, Florida State seemed to have always had our number. The great late Bobby Bowden, he really, when it came to his recruiting Florida and that whole southern area, he had it on lockdown. I know, Steve Spurrier did as well, but, there was nobody like, Coach Bowden. And, they came up there, they had some big boys up front. Our offensive line, they were good, but, they just had another level of speed. Their We held it in check for a little bit, but then they wound up doing their thing. It was a torrential downpour. So from a bigger picture standpoint, it was frustrating because I think it would have been a different story if it was a sunnier day or a drier day at least. But yeah, they were the real deal. They were deserving of being number one in the country. I forget who the quarterback was.
Florida State.
Yeah, from Florida State.
Casey Weldon.
A.T. Weldon, yeah. Casey was just as good of a game manager as it got. I mean, that dude just knew where to go with the football, was very just smart with it, didn't make any real big mistakes, and just made the necessary plays. And like I said, they had some really good skill guys. I remember Ampley. He was my teammate at the Vikings, but he was one of their running backs. And yeah, they had a great defensive back in Terrell Buckley. Just real solid team.
Okay, so fast forward to Ohio State. Beat Ohio State, the Hall of Fame Bowl. Very impressive win against them. A blue blood like Ohio State, 24-17 in the Hall of Fame Bowl. Talk about that experience.
Hall of Fame Bowl, it was cool because, we're playing Ohio State. Again, if you notice, whether it been playing Georgia, playing Arizona, obviously now, playing Florida State, Ohio State, when it came to bowl games, Syracuse was just killing it. We were undefeated. And, I think in my time, we went to 5 bowls and won all 5 of them. But with that said, this was the second time we went to the Hall of Fame Bowl because the first time was my true freshman year when I redshirted. We played LSU in the bowl, and we wound up beating LSU. So we were beating SEC teams. We were taking it to Big Ten as well. And Pac-12 at that time, or Pac-10 or whatever they were, with obviously beating Arizona. And I just think that game, when you look back on it, Kurt Herbstreit was the quarterback for Ohio State. And at the time, I just didn't know, but with the power of YouTube, you get a chance to see some stuff that you just didn't think you would ever see again. And that game is on YouTube. Ohio State versus Syracuse. Kurt Herbstreit was like throwing passes in the dirt. He was overthrowing his receivers. Then you had like Joey Galloway on his team. He had Papa Benoite. He had like maybe 3 or 4 other guys that were like dudes that were going to go to the league, to the NFL. And I mean, we weren't slouches ourselves. Obviously, we beat them, and we had
to the hottest gospel online radio station.
That was something in the background.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. My apologies.
No worries. But anyway, that being said, yeah. From an Ohio State standpoint, you could just see where our offense, we had what it took to just do what we needed to do to be successful. Whereas from their offense, their quarterback really struggled. We made the necessary big plays, and we wound up winning. So, that was a huge win. That was like a statement win to say, our season, was a success, but now we had the exclamation point of beating an Ohio State in the bowl game.
All right, your last season, very successful season, 10-2. That's your final season. The games I want to talk about, you played Ohio State again. Unfortunately, you lost 35-12. Talk about that. That was like the rematch, obviously, of the Hall of Fame game. Talk about what went wrong in that game against Ohio State.
I just think that they had better quarterback play. I think they have a boy, Robert Smith, who was a young freshman, and Robert was fast as fast could be, had long leg, big strider. I think their defense was way more sound and better. And unfortunately, I still got my elevated shoulder to look at it, but Yeah, I dislocated my shoulder. Or separated, I should say, not dislocated, but separated my shoulder. Had a grade 2 separation, and we just didn't get it done that day. They take my hat off to them. They played a really good game.
Okay, the other game, the two games I want to talk about is the Miami game. They was number 1 in the country. He was number 8. Lost 16-10. Played them tough. Then against Colorado next. But talk about the Miami game because obviously they're the defending champions that won a lot of games in a row. They were down in the program at the time. But talk about falling short. You almost beat them because I remember Casey Greer made a tackle on one of the tight ends at the end. But talk about coming up short against Miami.
Yeah, no, the Miami game, it was the talk. I mean, campus was buzzing. Everybody was like, yo, we're going to do this. That was the loudest I heard the Carrier Dome be since my senior year of high school when Penn State came up to play Syracuse and we whooped them in the dome. So from a bigger picture standpoint, it was epic. Like we knew it was at stake, and we actually got an acceptance to go to the Fiesta Bowl. I think it was before the game, but yeah, no, it was a scenario where our defense played out of its mind. I think Gino Torretta threw either 3 interceptions and probably could have had maybe 2 more or something like that. But our offense, our offensive line, knowing now, had to go up against a young Warren Sapp. And there was some other dudes that we had to face as well, but they had some dudes, and it was hard for us to get our offense. We were a run first offense. We had a variation of the freeze option. Yeah, no, it was a great game, and like you said, it came down to a great tackle saving for Miami, but us coming up short. Rest in peace, Chris Gedney, my teammate tight end. We just couldn't get it done. So yeah, those are you're making me reminisce about all my losses. But there were a lot of other games where we just had some really good victories as well.
Yeah, speaking of victory, you beat Colorado 26-22 in the Fiesta Bowl. A top 10 team in Colorado. Colorado, figure out, today, obviously, Deion Sanders doing his thing, but obviously, they got a lot of work to do to be like Colorado of the past. But Colorado was a big time program. You beat them 26-22. You was number 6 in the country. They were number 10. You beat them. You was 4-0 in the bowl season. Talk about that win against Colorado, your final game of your career at Syracuse.
Yeah, well, we got to emphasize 5 of those because I was on the team when we beat LSU. It's just I was a redshirt.
Oh, okay.
I'm just sitting there on the bench as a freshman. I'm like, woo, we get the rings, we get all of the swag. But to your point, yes, that was my final game, and Colorado was riding up the high wave of being former national champions. Bill McCartney, I think, was still the coach there. They had a really strong, solid defense. Deion Figures was the one notable guy in the secondary that was really good. Another kid actually went to the league. We played against each other. I think he spent some time in Atlanta as a defensive back. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but Chad Brown was a linebacker who I think he played predominantly for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a couple of years. He was a real solid player as well. So yeah, there was a lot of talent on their side of the football. Michael Westbrook, who would have been a number 1 draft choice, I think the following year. For the Washington Redskins, I think he was like 4th overall, something like that. Cordell Stewart, but our defense again, stood up and stood the test, and then our offense made some plays that we needed to make, and our special teams, we had a kickoff return, a reverse. So everybody was looking at what my brother did in college at Notre Dame and doing kickoff returns, and he was just so electrifying. Well, for me, as a kickoff returner. They were like, no, we ain't going to put him on the map. What we're going to do is we're going to what is called sky kick. They'll booch it up in the air and you need a fair catch it or whatever. And it was very frustrating because it kind of limited what we did as a return team. But if they did kick it deep, we had a reverse setup, which one of the reasons why I felt like, we jumped up on Florida, the one you referenced the year before, is because we had a reverse that went to the house. And so we dialed that same reverse up against Colorado, and sure enough, took it to the house as well. And it was just fun. It was all fun. As far as just obviously going 5-0 in bowls. And, my junior, senior year, I think we only lost, the 4 games, and that was it. So it was pretty cool.
Okay, now you go into the draft. You get drafted second round by the Minnesota Vikings in 1993. It was the highest draft Syracuse played since Moose Johnson, Darryl Johnston. Talk about falling out. Did you think you was going to be like a first round pick? You fell into the second round. What were your recollections of that, just falling out of the first round to the second round? Talk about that.
Yeah, I don't know so much as I fell out of the first round, so much as the way in which the draft was shaping up. I would say going from a kid who wasn't really sure what he was going to do, if you remember back at the Arizona recollection with the Aloha Bowl, to my senior year where I was in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Finished that award, 10th in the nation, whatever that's worth. But I was an All-American, 2-sport All-American, both in track and football, first time since the late Jim Brown in 1967. So, I think the way in which I was trending up, it was like, hey, this is great. I feel like I was just a guy to now where, I'm going to get drafted and get drafted high. And so, yes, some people had a first round grade on me, and whatever else. And I think that just went to, how I was able to approach the game and be successful in the games. And I think overall, for me, being drafted by the Minnesota Vikings was a complete surprise. It was a pleasant surprise. And I think their offense and what it meant to me fit me perfectly. So, I'm more than grateful that I got drafted, and I got drafted by the Vikings. I think the other 2 teams that were looking for receivers that were talked about, at the end of the first round was Green Bay and Chicago. And knowing what I know now, I'm so glad I did not go to either team. And I had the career path that I had.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip around because it's great to have you on because the Baltimore Ravens play tomorrow. You came to the Baltimore Ravens in 1999, led the team with 68 catches, 1,105 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. You had a career high 258 yards in 1 game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, you finished playing with the Saints. You played with Miami and Minnesota before you went to Baltimore. But talk about coming to Baltimore that year in '99. Talk about that experience, the first time you came there.
Yeah, I think just the one thing that kind of stood out, from a Baltimore standpoint, I was in what I call my wilderness experience. And, after Minnesota, I really just struggled to figure out, some of the flow of free agency and kind of fit in. I was down in Miami for a year, went to New Orleans, and got a call from Brian Billick, who Brian was our offensive coordinator at the Minnesota Vikings. He now is the head coach in Baltimore. I just think that game was a game where it was late December, it was like 50 degrees, it was perfect conditions, and our offense was struggling in the first half. We get chewed out, and the second half, I was like, if there was ever a time for me to step up and be that guy, it's now. And sure enough, I was thankful, I was fortunate to, step up and be that guy, and had a career day, and we wound up winning the game.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the 2000 year. Obviously, that's the year you captured the Super Bowl. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on as far as like the offense having their struggles. But let's talk about that defense that year. And first of all, we're gonna get to the playoffs. Let's get to the playoffs against Denver Broncos. You won that game 21-3. Talk about that first win in the playoffs against the Broncos.
Yeah, so obviously we had this historic defense. Best to ever do it. Even the Chicago Bears, 85 Bears, everybody want to say them. But I think one of the things that I remember about that game was the wind was just ridiculous. And it was our first game at home as far as hosting a playoff game. We were the wild card team. And we were the higher seed. Obviously, Denver was a good football team, had some really phenomenal receivers. Ed McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's dad, was the receiver. Rod Smith was the other receiver. And they just had, just this offense. I think it was Danny Cannell, I believe, who was the offensive coordinator, or the receiver coach. That didn't make any sense. He was the quarterback for their team. And I remember their receiver coach and their offensive coordinator were feeling very confident that they could match up against our team. And sure enough, like it was a case where our defense just clamped everybody down. We had this real funky play where Shannon Sharp, our tight end, and Jamal Lewis, our rookie running back, he got a pass out the flat and it flipped up in the air. Shannon wound up catching it and taking it to the house. And that's when you just knew, it's a wrap, we're going to win.
All right, so the next game, obviously this was a rivalry at the time, the divisional playoff game between the Titans and the Ravens. You win 24-10. Talk about that win.
Yeah, the main thing with the Titans win was that it was such an intense game, you could barely hear yourself think. That's how loud it was. But again, like we had a blocked field goal that went for a touchdown. Anthony Mitchell was the guy that took it to the house, and it was an unbelievable experience. One that you just seared in your mind, just the intensity of the crowd and the way we were able to get a victory against an extremely talented football team.
In the AFC Championship game, you beat the Raiders. I was the biggest player of that game because that defense was so great. Shannon Sharp's 96-yard touchdown pass caught from Trent Dilfer. Talk about that game that you go to your first Super Bowl, winning 16-3 over the Raiders. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, all we felt was that we just needed 10 points. Anytime you get up 10, we're going to win. And sure enough, Rich Gannon had Tony Siragusa, our defensive tackle, and now this play is outlawed. They actually call it the Tony Siragusa rule, where you can't, get a quarterback and lift him up and throw and tackle him to the ground. He did just that and knocked him out of the game. They couldn't do anything even for that, but they definitely couldn't do it since. And we wound up just taking it to the next and getting a victory.
Right, the next game, obviously the Super Bowl, that experience leading up to the Super Bowl. You play the Giants, win 34-7. Obviously the culmination of a dominant defense. Talk about that experience and win your first Super Bowl.
Yeah, from a Super Bowl standpoint, it was obviously they alternated every year, like a week, 2 weeks, week, 2 weeks, week, 2 weeks, which I never understood. But we were the 2-week team, and us and the Giants, from a matchup standpoint, we just flat out were better than them. And I remember reading the stat that the defense did not give up a single possession as far as like they either had to punt the ball or they had a turnover in all their possessions throughout the entire game. That's how badass we were. And offensively, we just felt like, hey, we just need to put points on the board. Only way they're going to score if we allow them. Sure enough, we allow them a kickoff return. But yeah, outside of that, like it was just like a perfect game, perfect storm, and a hell of a lot of crazy talented dudes getting it done.
Okay, so obviously, you played with the Baltimore Ravens. You ended your career. See, you ended your career with the Dolphins, correct? Or was it Indianapolis? Okay, Indianapolis. Talk about that final season with the Colts.
Yeah, there really was like an interesting year because playing with Peyton Manning, Peyton had, certainly his groove and confidence with his guys, but it was a real neat experience as far as like how, one team, one organization, you get used to doing things a certain way, and another team, they do it a little bit different way. But bottom line was, it was surreal how, seamlessly it flowed when it came to, the offense and some of the nomenclature. It worked itself out. And it was amazing to me just the way Peyton Manning had full control of the offense.
Okay, so that was the end of your career. So you felt that at that time that it was time for you to go, or did you feel that you had more football to play? Because obviously that was your final year. But talk about that experience.
So from a bigger picture standpoint, again, that's the kind of theme I keep bringing up. I know for me, it's a situation where my career was always kind of like, an up and down, going through the wilderness kind of an event. But it was without its issues because I had C3, C4 neck fusion. And I think playing with a neck that was really just damaged, going back to my New Orleans Saints days, it was a blessing that I made it out of the game without any serious injuries, as far as like paralysis or something along those lines when it comes to your back. And obviously, when I say back, I'm saying my neck.
All right, let's fast forward to tomorrow, man. Your former team, the Baltimore Ravens, trying to get to the Super Bowl for the first time in 11 years. Talk about putting your analysis hat. What do you think Baltimore has to do to knock off the defending champions? The Kansas City Chiefs, they are a worthy champion, obviously, beat Buffalo last week. Let's talk about what Baltimore has to do to win this championship and get to the Super Bowl.
Biggest thing I think is, where's Travis Kelce? How is Isaiah Pacheco? And confuse as best you can Patrick Mahomes and get pressure on him. That's the blueprint. Offensively, keep Lamar Jackson upright. Let him do what he does absolutely the best. He's had more on his plate as far as some of the things that they asked him to do. He's done it in the most amazing of fashions. I think it's a no-brainer. I think this is an opportunity for the Ravens to really win and knock the defending champions off the block.
All right, man, thank you for your time, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Great stories, great information. Thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate you having me on, man.
All right, thank you. That's Qadry Ismail.